Hi, welcome to the Thank You Notes podcast. My name is Travis. I'm the host. On this podcast, I invite people on, I write them a thank you note, and I read it to them. In exchange, they write a thank you note to someone or something they feel deserves a public display of gratitude and reads it on air for me and all of you. I'm really glad you decided to listen. My guest today is Dr. Rocco Florio. Rocco is an OBGYN who is currently practicing in Kansas City, Missouri. He is originally from New York, where he did his med school and his residency. He and I met through a mutual friend on a ski trip in 2011, and we've been friends ever since. On this episode, we get into the ski trip, we get into his new side project, owning and maintaining a farm, and he shares a note to the parents of one of his childhood friends that really helped him out. So without any further ado, let's get to Dr. Rocco Florio.
The latest I've ever recorded. I got my brown. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, what are you drinking?
Kentucky Owl.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Is that? I know nothing about booze.
Neither do I. I got a brother-in-law who lives in Kentucky. He's a sweet guy, and he sends me a bottle every year. This bottle's Weller's or Weller. It said it's a wheated bourbon. I'm assuming it's made from wheat, but it's pretty delicious.
I do a slice of lemon in mine. It's like an old-fashioned without the sugar.
I've had your old-fashions. They're worth it.
I go back and forth on like keto thing or sugar and...
It makes sense. Yeah, that's strict. It can't even be in your cocktail.
So Rocco, we're live. This is the Thank You Notes podcast. Seemed to take a liking to it and said I ripped off Ira Glass.
Well, no, I didn't say you ripped off Ira Glass. I said you're in the same genre as that, which I thought was a celebration of everyday life and a positive spin on humanity, which, yeah. And the fact that you don't know who Ira Glass is or ever listen to This American Life makes it even more genuine.
Well, thank you. That was kind of nice to hear that. And I'm getting, people are just kind of coming out of the woodworks and saying that they're liking this. And you were one of the first people. So thank you. So here you are. You made it on.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So let's start it off. Do you write thank you notes, Rocco?
I have never written a thank you note in my life.
Really?
I'm just, it's funny to think about it. Being young and naive, it was never something that my mom or dad did. I think I always just looked at it as I just said thank you. Why do I have to do it again? But as I get older, I see the utility of it. I think it's super sweet when I get one from somebody. Like to this day, I still have not written one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So what's your reaction when you get one?
I'm always taken aback a little bit because I'm like, well, it's like, oh, wow, like that was above and beyond. It's something I remember. I'm always appreciative of the extent people go as far as their stationery for them. So I think that might be what really gets me when it's like a really more about the medium that it's on than actually what's written. Like I've heard you say in previous podcasts is, short and sweet's best. And I agree. But to me, it's like, when they write it on something that they took the time to kind of procure a thank you note that represents them. That's what I think I remember most about.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that far. When my mom would make us go all around town when the stationery stores had clearances, and she was like, we got to get the Crane stationery, the thank you notes. So we just have boxes and boxes and boxes of this stuff when I was growing up. When I graduated from high school, they made sure I had personalized stationery to write notes and stuff. And I moved this box of stationery from like college to med school to it's probably still in my house around here somewhere.
Yeah, the amount of carbon spent in lugging that stuff around, it's got to be pretty amazing.
What about your wife, Karen? Does she write thank you notes, or is this the Florio family?
No, we're kind of the same person in that extent, to the point where I think when it came to our wedding, she may have written thank you notes for that and then just handed a stack of them to my dad to distribute because my dad had the invite list or something because we had it at his house. And my father being of the no thank you note camp, I think they sat in his dirty pickup truck for like 2 years before he was like, oh yeah, like buried under, some asphalt tools or something. And it was like, oh yeah, I never got those out. Again, I think we spent half the wedding thanking everybody. It seemed redundant at the time, but now I understand the purpose.
I think there's different ways to show gratitude. I think a thank you note is just kind of one way to do that. And from what you're telling me, you made it a point to thank any people specifically. Thank you for this. Thank you. Make a phone call, make a something. I guess it doesn't have to be a note. And that's just kind of what I grew up with, but it's the thought that counts.
It is, but to me, it's something that now looking at it, when it's done, it's not just in the ether. Like, oh, I said that, or I called you, or I texted you. It's like a piece of paper that you get, and it's there. It's concrete. Email,
that used to be, there's the meme where like when you used to get an email that was a big event, and now you just get so many. Whereas you used to get so much mail and it wasn't a big event. But now when you get personalized mail, it's a big event. Like, oh, what's this? Who's it from? And the pendulum has shifted tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. A handwritten letter, like that would blow me away. I can't even remember the last time I've gotten one from somebody.
So we should probably tell people how we know each other. How do you and I know each other, Rocco?
Ski Scoot.
Ski Scoot.
Yeah.
What is Ski Scoot?
Our mutual friend, Bill Dudley, who you went to residency with, but also did you guys live on the same property?
I lived in his garage apartment for my last 2 years of residency.
And he was my med school roommate. So we're kind of connected that way.
Billy D is the center of the wheel and we're just spokes.
Exactly. I was just doing the math before you got on. It's been 14 years since Vail. That was 2008, like early 2008.
No, I'm going to have to correct you there. That was my last year of residency. That was 2011.
Oh, you're right. I take it back. That was med school. So 2011, 4 years later. So we're over 10 years, though. That was my point.
January 2011, you, myself, Bill Dudley, Chris Mosella, and Miguel de Valdenebro all go to Vail for a week. 5 guys in a 2-bedroom condo. And what happened that week? Why has it reached such mythic proportions?
Besides the really good skiing, snowboarding mostly, I think we were all snowboarding, I enjoyed just hanging out with you, Bill, Chris, and Miguel, but especially with you, man, like the cooking side of it. I think that's what I always took away the most from these trips was eating in and making a big deal out of making a meal and spending time at some whatever Airbnb. Back then we were just staying in condos, but it's funny to think that I enjoyed the peripheral stuff even more than the snowboarding, even though snowboarding was awesome. Getting to know you and Mock and Miguel and everybody else who's been on these trips for 10 plus years has really been awesome. I look forward to it every year.
I've felt the same way too. That the cooking that you and I do on the trips is the most fun cooking. And I don't know that the results are ever out of this world. I do have more fun doing those than I do any other meal that I cook.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm the same way. I look forward to it every year, and I haven't been in 4 or 5 years, and it's killing me. I'm really trying to make it to Jackson in February, and it looks like I'm going to make it.
Awesome. It should be good.
So 11 years, we've been going to these ski trips. They've bounced around to different mountains. It's usually like a week, sometimes less. Now that everybody's gotten married, or most of the people have gotten married. Most people have kids. It's still important to make time for those things. And you've got to have your own stuff. You got to have your own things for yourself that don't necessarily contradict your family, but it just enriches you. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think this is satisfying that adventure need. Getting out, hanging out with a bunch of guys, hitting the mountain early, hitting it hard, and then coming home. And there's something about that more now than ever. I think it's hard to get in your life is, when you got work and family and kids and everything else going on, just to be able to go do something, battle the elements, something physically taxing, and then come back and then celebrate it with a bunch of people you like and pick their brains about stuff. It's hard to just hang out with a bunch of guys in general now. I like that it's all slotted out like that.
Yeah, so you're an OBGYN in Kansas City. I'm an anesthesiologist in Dallas. I'd imagine most of our days are pretty much the same, see the same people. And after you've been doing this as long as you and I have been, every procedure, every delivery, every C-section is more or less the same. There's kind of the outliers, but bell curve is top of that bell curve. You ride that for most of your career. This is a chance to hang out with people that, that kind of are going through kind of the same thing that you are, but different, going and hitting the mountain and challenging yourself in a new way, talking about it. That's just the thing that refreshes me about the whole thing.
Yeah, I always leave charged, like the battery's charged.
So let's talk a little bit about you, Rocco. Yeah, like I mentioned, you're an OBGYN in Kansas City, and you did med school in New York, correct?
Yes.
Tell me about your practice in Kansas City.
We are in Lee Summit, which is a suburb of Kansas City. We're on the Missouri side. We've built this practice a little over 5 years ago to now. It was just me and another doc when we started, and a midwife. And now we got 6 docs, the midwife, 3 nurse practitioners. And it's a general OB/GYN practice, which I like, the versatility of it. So I'm in the office most of the time, and then I'll cover the hospital as a hospitalist 1 week out of the month. Usually doing 1 call a week and 1 weekend a month. We read ultrasounds, we do procedures. We're probably 3/4 OB and the other quarter is GYN. And I got great partners now, which makes my life easy. And it's been nice. We're part of a corporate system, but they essentially leave us alone to kind of run the practice the way we want to, which has been great. I feel like we have a private practice where we don't actually have to deal with the business side, which is
nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
And you also have a second job now. You're a part-time farmer, isn't that correct?
I am. You caught me on a bad day because a raccoon got into the chicken coop last night. But yes, for that same 5 years, we bought 20 acres of land about 3 miles away from our house. It's got a pond on it, and we started with 6 sheep and a donkey, and now we have 30 sheep. And
oh man.
Yeah, at some point we had 30 chickens too, 2 beehives, a pretty thriving garden until this year. It's been really dry this year. It's been hard to keep things growing. We've tried to get a vineyard going. At some point we planted 150 vines, and that's a work in progress still. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. The sheep are amazing animals. Chickens are probably the best of all the farm animals because you get a little gift every day. So going out there getting an egg is pretty rewarding. Eating all our veggie scraps has been amazing because I think part of all this was wanting to be more efficient with our waste. So having a legit compost system was important to me. And then when I got chickens, and I don't have that much compost left because they eat almost everything. So it's been really cool.
So what was the impetus behind the farm and everything? Because you didn't grow up on a farm.
No, I grew up in suburbs of Long Island, New York, minimal land, and didn't know anybody with a farm. Like the idea of farming in general, we could go out east, Long Island, and there were people who had vineyards and stuff, but it was completely foreign to me. It's pretty serendipitous. I think I may have told you the story, but my mom and I were hanging out. I think it was right after New Year's Day. She was visiting from Savannah, Georgia, because they moved down there. And we went to lunch, and then she wanted to look at a couple houses for sale. And so we were on Zillow at this fried chicken restaurant. And I said, oh, look at this thing. And I was like, there's no house on it, but it just went on for sale today. This was January 2nd, 5 years ago. And I said, let's go check this out. It's close. I always wanted to go up that street. I've never driven up there. And we drove up. There was no for sale sign or anything yet, but it was this big piece of property with this grandiose green gate with these bulls, these iron stencils of bulls on each gate. And So I actually hopped the fence. It was snowing. It was pretty rough weather. And I remember like saying like, oh, I might get mauled by a bull walking back here. And I was looking at it and I saw the pond and just saw these like rolling hills and it looked beautiful. And I jumped back over the fence and got in the car. I said, oh, wow, it was pretty cool. You know, nothing like what you wanted, but nice. I'm happy we saw it. Went on with our day and it just stuck in my head for a couple of weeks. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And finally I told my wife, I said, I think we should buy this. I think it'd be good for our son. I think it'd be good for us to have like some land because I love our house, but we live in like a pretty scrubbed suburban neighborhood. To have a little bit of nature that close to us was a big benefit. The deal went through, and once I bought it, then I was kind of like, all right, what are we going to do with it? It was really overgrown. So I started doing research on what kind of livestock would be good for that. And everyone was telling me to get goats, but kept reading how good they are at escaping. Yeah, we ended up getting sheep because they weren't so picky with what they ate as cows are. And they've been great. So I found them on Craigslist from a guy about an hour north who was the sweetest guy ever. He owns like over 1 million square feet of warehousing in northern Kansas City. He's older guy, he's in his 80s. But he told me a story. He was hardworking dude, dyslexic, and really just walked into this real estate guy's office one day in his 20s and said, I want to buy a warehouse. And the guy said, give me the name of 5 people you know and their phone numbers. And then don't call me, I'll call you if we could do a deal. And the guy called him back and said, you seem like you're a stand-up guy. I'm going to give you this one warehouse and you could pay me like rent, but rent to own. And then John ended up doing 8 more of those deals or something with the same guy. Yeah, I mean, he lived on 80 acres of land, this beautiful house up there. He's just the sweetest guy ever. And so he raised sheep as a kid. And so he started raising them and he had way too many. That's where he was trying to unload some. And I ended up buying a bunch of ewes, which are female sheep off of him. Then I got a ram later. And then that turned into like nature finding its way. It's been really fun. It gives me a lot of balance in life as far as having the professional side work and kind of putting my head in that, and then being able to step away and be out there and shut it all off is wonderful.
I was gonna. What have been your son's and your wife's response to it? Do they do a lot on the farm, or is this mostly your hobby?
Karen definitely. She lived on 80 acres growing up. She knew all about this and she kind of chuckled at me. She said, you don't know what you're getting into. And she is very helpful. And we've had great times out there where we've made big fires and had a bunch of people out there. We had our babysitter's daughter's wedding out there last year, which was probably like the crowning moment. We had a really good time. But in the end, yeah, it's my baby. I think my son, he loves animals. He's out there. And when I get him out there, he wants to stay. I can't get him to leave, but sometimes it's inertia trying to get him out there because it's Missouri. It's hot. It's cold. It's not always super comfortable to be out there. Right now, this time of year is perfect. So we were out there the other day and it was the same thing. Once we're out there, he's like, can we stay? And I said, yeah, like until dinner, like we got to go. But yeah, this is, I had Nathaniel out there for 2 years and he's a German guy who's got U.S. parents that were out in Cologne, Germany for work and had all their kids in Germany. And then he met a gal who had a Swiss father, but she was American. And they lived in Switzerland for 3 years. Even though he was a personal trainer by like education and trade, he ended up working as a shepherd for a veterinarian in Switzerland. By happenstance, she was a labor and delivery nurse, and somebody said, hey, you should hire Danielle's husband. And I did. And he taught me so much just about raising sheep and rotating them on the land. And it was amazing. And then they moved to Charleston. But while he was there, we had that place humming and I learned a ton. So it's been a ride.
Have you watched that show on Amazon Prime, Clarkson's Farm?
I have not.
So are you familiar with Jeremy Clarkson and Top Gear and all that?
Yes.
When the pandemic started, he lives out in the country in England, and he decided to turn his he has a huge estate out there, and it's in the middle of a bunch of farms. So he decided to turn it into a working farm, and he made a show out of it just to show how hard that how much you're essentially scraping by. So he gets a pack of sheep, and I forget what he grows potatoes and soybean, and it goes through a lot of what you're talking about. Him learning about sheep, shearing. He learns how to shear them. He gets 2 rams, and they have a litter of ewes, and they get woken up in the middle of the night because the lambs were in the wrong pens, and like the moms were trying to kill them. Yeah, they're freaking out. And it's just a bunch of stuff that you don't realize. It's a lot of work, and it's a whole other world that I was just kind of enlightened. You may like that show.
I should definitely watch that, because there was one, I can't remember the name of it, but it was something early on Netflix that probably started my desire for this whole thing. But it was about some guy who was up in New England, and he was an artist. To make money on the side, he was working at some farm, and then he got his hand cut in some like wood chipper or something. And so he screwed up his hand, and he ended up becoming a farmer. And just like all the stuff he goes through. And that's what I've realized since Nathaniel's left. I was doing it all myself for a while, and I was trying to keep things pretty minimal as far as maintenance goes and being natural, and things were working out. But when Nathaniel got there and showed me how much more efficient you could be and just how much more productive. And then when he left, it's all I've been laughing about is like nature is winning. I don't have enough strength or diesel because I don't have a real tractor or anything to fight back nature, to see what this place has gone through since he's left, and the amount of like handwork he did. It blows my mind. The guy was a truck. It's really like what I'm learning now is like nature will always win. But when the human race whenever that ends, like you'll never know that we were here, because it won't take long for them to overgrow everything we built. Yeah, I should watch the show. It's been a lesson that way, because I felt like for a while I had this stuff down pretty good, but this last year has been a lot.
All right, well, I'm going to read my thank you note to you, Rocco. So another you rock. Dear Rocco, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for all of the advice and reassurance you gave me and my wife during her pregnancy. While I did receive a brief education in obstetrics, it was very quickly tested and defeated in the face of firsthand experience. Your phone calls and texts went a long way to calming both myself and my wife. You were also instrumental in establishing our ski trip and keeping it alive for 11 years. It's been a highlight of my life, and I'm always jonesing to go back. Thanks a lot, and see you on the mountain, Travis.
Wow, I love it. You know what? I forgot that you would call me or text me during your pregnancy.
You must get it all the time.
It's funny. Like right now, my father's been dating the same woman, Ness, and she's super sweet. But her daughter is now pregnant, and she just told me at their grandfather's funeral that I was just at. And since then, she's texted me a couple times, and it reminded me that her sister did the same thing. It's so. What I'm chuckling at, just as you read that, it happens. I guess it happens a lot, but I really enjoy it. And I look at it as just like a friend texting me. I don't remember it as like, oh, like I helped you out during your pregnancy. It's funny. But I mean, the fact that I'm able to do it is awesome. So.
Man, I wish I could have that mindset about it. People don't, try to pick my brain about something that's going. Yours is a lot more commonplace. That's a really awesome mindset to have about it. And I wish I'd had the same.
I'm lucky in the sense that obstetrics is usually a normal, healthy person who is experiencing a bunch of really weird things that they never experienced before, but then they'll go back to normal, right? So it's happy medicine. I'm there to reassure them, and, every once in a while to catch something serious. But it's a lot easier than actually dealing with somebody who has some serious medical condition that is going to change their life forever for the negative. So I do feel spoiled that way in this field.
Yeah, I remember when we'd have med students or even OB residents rotate through OB anesthesia, and I'm just like, hey, I want to do a crash C-section. I want to do this. I want to do this weird, this esoteric thing. I'm like, honestly, 99 out of 100 women that come in here are going to deliver uneventfully.
Yeah.
Put your epidural in, put your spinal in, baby comes out 99 out of 100 times. That's what happens.
Are you still doing OB anesthesia?
I am not.
I was going to say, because I feel like in the last, I don't know if it's just from COVID on, or if it's been before that, but we have all said like, man, like people are just sicker. I don't know if people are just heavier or just having their babies later or what's going on, but it's just like between hypertension and preeclampsia and other things, I feel more like a medicine doctor than I did in the past. It's worrisome. It is.
No, the last time I did OB was about 2-ish years ago. For the most part, I put in a few epidurals and that was that. I did have a woman deliver a 25-week-old.
Oof.
And they asked me to intubate the kid.
Yeah.
And I'd never done that before. So that was a little remarkable. But other than that, my OB experience has not been that exciting. All right. So you have brought your own thank you note. Who did you write a thank you note to?
All right. This is going to be a little bit of a roundabout story. I'm going to start it with Xander. Xander is my son's friend who lives around the block. He's a kid who I see him in the summertime. I see him outside at like 7 a.m. riding his bike. I see him at like 8 p.m. just walking the streets. And it's like, man, the kid is just always outside. And he comes over and he knocks on the door and he's buddies with Rocco and he's a cool kid. And we got to know his family, and his mom has 2 young kids. I think they're 1 and 2 years old. And Xander's 8 or 9. So crying babies, stressed out mom, and dad works nights. So either she's telling him, go get lost and come back for dinner, or he just voluntarily is just trying to get away from all that. It reminded me of when I was a kid. Lexi, my sister's 2 years younger than me, but then my mom had Sarah and Maxine 10 and 12 years later. It brought me back to how intense the house was with 2 babies at home and my mom dealing with it, my dad working his ass off. So I was always looking for some sort of sanctuary. And my buddy Eric, his parents were always just so friggin' kind to me. And like we would hang out at his house all the time, and I would sleep over all summer. They just brought me into their family. And I love my parents. My parents are the best. They really are. But at that point in life, I think I just needed some sanity. And Mr. and Mrs. P were able to kind of bring me in and give me that peace and teach me a ton. Seeing Xander over here reminded me that Eric and I, as we got older, we drifted apart. And I never really thanked them for just being amazing people who were just so instrumental in my life. So I wrote my thank you note to them. Yeah. Okay. All right. Mr. and Mrs. P, this thank you note is long overdue. I always immensely appreciated your hospitality and love, but when Eric and I drifted apart, I lost touch with the whole family. You were both so influential in my life. You showed me how to be patient, accepting, organized, and successful. I'm so blessed to have been a part of your family. Thank you. What's funny is I used to correspond with Mrs. P on Facebook for a while, but I've been off that for 6 or 7 years, so I don't even know what they're doing. I have to get in touch with them and actually send them that.
Having done a few of these and talked to some people, you just start to realize how often this kind of thing happens, where some set of parents will semi-adopt, one of their kids' friends just because of whatever kind of madness is going on in their house. And I remember a few instances of that happening in my high school. Some kid couldn't stay at home because his parents were going through something or whatever. Nobody's forcing you to do it. And nobody would think less of you for saying, not for doing nothing or just chipping in a meal every once in a while, but for people that actually step up and do these things for kids. It's, I'm thankful I never did it, but it really is something special. So I'm glad you did it. And I didn't know any of this about you. I've known you for several years, but I've met one of your sisters, but I didn't know much about where you grew up and what was going on and you and your adolescence. So I thank you very much for sharing that.
I really, the whole it takes a village to raise a child. Like the older I get, I understand that more. I also wrote a thank you haiku to you. I love haikus.
I didn't know.
This one is kind of insider baseball. So,
Uh-oh.
But I think we might have unpacked it enough with the ski scoot stuff.
Okay.
Shaggy wet beard ski with sincerity abound. UOG for show.
I love it. The shaggy beard for everybody is, if you Google beard ski, BEARDSKI, it's these masks you can wear while you're skiing with a giant beard on them. And I used to wear one. I still take it with me every once in a while, but the beard ski. So those things mine would just get caked trying to follow people that were better than me into the rough terrain. I love it. I haven't heard a haiku in years.
You're coming back.
Well, Rock, I think that's as good a place as any to end it on a haiku. I'm really glad you came on, and I'm really glad we did this, Rocco. Do you have anything else to add?
No, you keep going, man. I thought about it. I think you'll have Barack on here in 2 or 3 years. That's
2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's my over/under. We'll say 3. Under 3.
You heard it here first. 2025.
Get Barack on the thank you notes.
I'm looking forward to it. Well, thanks, man. We'll
all right, brother. See you in Jackson.
Rocco Florio, doctor, farmer, snowboarder, lover. What can't that man do? Thanks, Rocco, for coming on again. If you've made it this far, please consider leaving a review. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get these things. If you have any constructive criticism, like I had somebody tell me that they could not hear the show unless they had their volume on 95%. Let me know. Email me, Facebook message me, whatever. I don't know these things. I'm not an audio engineer. It helps me make the show a better experience for you guys. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next episode. Bye.